Amara stood at the altar in a white silk hanbok, her hands trembling so violently she had to clasp them together to hide it. The wedding hall was magnificent. All crystal chandeliers and imported roses, filled with 300 guests she didn't know. Her groom, Park Min-jae, stood beside her in a tailored black suit, his smile perfect for the cameras, his grip on her hand just tight enough to hurt. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell every single person in this room that this wedding was a lie, a trap, a hostage situation dressed up in silk and flowers. But when she opened her mouth to speak, all she could see was her little brother Kofi lying in that hospital bed, tubes running from his small body, and Min-jae's mother leaning over him with that cold smile saying, "Such a shame if something were to happen to him." The officiant, an elderly man who probably performed a dozen weddings like this every month, cleared his throat. His voice echoed through the hall, formal and final. "If anyone has objections to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." The room fell into that ceremonial silence. Amara felt Min-jae's hand tighten on hers even more. This was it. In 30 seconds, she would be married to a man whose family had threatened her brother's life. In 30 seconds, she would belong to the Park family, and they would own her silence about what Kofi had witnessed. In 30 seconds, her life as she knew it would end. The massive oak doors at the back of the hall exploded open with a sound like thunder. Every head in the room turned. Amara's heart stopped. A man strode down the center aisle, and the air itself seemed to part for him. He was tall, Korean, maybe mid-30s, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her entire education. His face was beautiful in a way that made you forget to breathe, all sharp angles and cold eyes, but it was the way he moved that made the room freeze. Like a predator. Like violence barely contained in human form. Behind him, 20 men in identical black suits filed in, lining the walls. No one moved. No one breathed. Amara had never seen this man before in her life. He walked past rows of Seoul's elite, past Min-jae's family, past her own mother who had gone sheet white in the front row. He walked straight up to the altar, stopped directly in front of Min-jae, and looked at him with eyes that held absolutely nothing. No anger. No emotion. Just a vast, terrifying emptiness. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. "I will marry her instead." Min-jae's face drained of all color. His hand released Amara so fast she almost stumbled. For the first time since she'd met him 6 months ago, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. The stranger didn't look at her. His gaze stayed locked on Min-jae. "You have 10 seconds to step away from her. You can't just walk in here and take her," Min-jae said, but his voice cracked. "This is a legal ceremony. She agreed to this. Didn't you, Amara?" Every eye in the room turned to her. Her mother's face was a mask of terror. Min-jae's mother stood up from her seat, her expression murderous. The stranger still hadn't looked at her, but she could feel the weight of his presence, the absolute certainty radiating from him. She had no idea who this man was. She had no idea why he was doing this. But Min-jae was terrified of him, and that told her everything she needed to know. "No," Amara heard herself say. "I didn't agree." The room exploded. Min-jae's father lunged forward. 3 of the stranger's men materialized in front of him like shadows, blocking his path. Min-jae's mother started screaming. Security guards appeared from the sides of the hall, but they froze when they saw the 20 men in black, their hands resting casually on weapons that created visible bulges under their jackets. The stranger finally looked at Amara. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but when he spoke his voice was different. Softer. "Come with me. Right now. I'll explain everything. But if you stay here, you will never be free." "You don't know anything about her," Min-jae spat, finding his voice again. "She's nothing to you. This is between our families." "She's everything to me," the stranger said quietly. "Because she was everything to the man who saved my life." Amara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. The man who saved his life. The only man she knew who had saved anyone was her father. And her father had been dead for 5 years, killed in what the police called a random mugging that was never solved. The stranger extended his hand to her. Your father made me promise to protect you. I'm here to keep that promise. Behind her, Minjae grabbed her arm. Don't you dare. If you walk out of here, your brother dies. My family owns that hospital. One word from my mother and they pull every plug. You know this. The stranger's eyes went to Minjae's hand on Amara's arm. Something flickered in that empty gaze. Something dark and ancient and utterly without mercy. Remove your hand, he said, or I will remove your arm. Minjae let go like she'd burned him. Amara looked at this stranger, this man who claimed to know her father, who had just walked into her nightmare and offered her a way out. She looked at Minjae, at his family, at the trap they'd built around her and Kofi. She thought about her brother, small and sick and helpless, and she thought about her father who had died in an alley 5 years ago, and she made a choice. She took the stranger's hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and utterly certain. He didn't pull her. He just held her hand and waited for her to move. She stepped off the altar. Chaos erupted. Minjae's family rushed forward. The men in black formed a wall between them and Amara. Her mother was crying, reaching for her. The officiant backed away, his face pale. Guests pulled out phones, recording everything. The stranger walked Amara down the aisle, his hand never leaving hers, his body positioned between her and every threat. When they reached the doors, he spoke without looking back. The Park family will not touch Kofi. If they try, I will consider it an act of war. Tell your mother that Kang Ji-hun sends his regards. The name rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Amara heard gasps, saw faces go white. Even Minjae's father, who had been shouting threats, fell silent. She didn't know the name, but clearly everyone else did. They walked out into blinding soul sunlight. A black Mercedes waited at the curb, door already open. The stranger guided her inside with a hand on her back, slid in beside her, and the door closed. The driver pulled away before she could even catch her breath. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Amara stared at her hands, still shaking, the white silk of her wedding dress now feeling like a costume from someone else's life. She was breathing too fast, her heart hammering against her ribs. Who are you? She finally managed. My name is Kang Ji-hun, he said. His voice had lost that cold edge from the wedding hall. Now it was just tired. Your father saved my life 5 years ago. He took a bullet that was meant for me. Before he died, he made me promise to watch over you. Amara turned to look at him. Really look at him. Up close, she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights, the way his hands rested calmly on his knees despite having just crashed a wedding with 20 armed men. My father was killed in a mugging, she said slowly. That's what the police told us. Your father was killed protecting me from a rival gang, Ji-hun said. The police told you what my people paid them to say. The truth would have put you and your family in danger. The car slid through soul traffic. Amara watched the city blur past the tinted windows, trying to process what he was saying. Her father, her gentle father who had taught literature at the university, who had read her bedtime stories in 3 languages, who had never hurt anyone in his life, had died protecting a gangster. I don't believe you, she said. Ji-hun pulled out his phone, tapped a few times and handed it to her. On the screen was a photo. Her father younger, smiling, his arm around a man she didn't recognize. Except she did recognize the eyes. Ji-hun's eyes, 5 years younger, full of something that looked almost like joy. We were friends, Ji-hun said quietly. Before I became what I am now. He was the only person who never asked me for anything, who never wanted to use my name or my connections. He just wanted to talk about books and art, and whether true kindness could exist in a corrupt world. He looked out the window. The night he died, I had just told him I was leaving, getting out of the business. He was happy for me. And then 3 men with guns appeared in that alley, and he stepped in front of me without hesitation. Amara's throat burned. She handed the phone back. Why didn't you ever tell me? Why have I never seen you before? Because I'm dangerous, Ji-hun said simply. Everyone I care about becomes a target. Your father made me promise to protect you, but the best way to protect you was to stay away. I paid for your scholarship to university. I made sure you got the job at the art gallery. I kept my distance and watched from far away, making sure you were safe. Until today. Until today, he agreed. When I discovered what the Park family was doing to you. Amara wrapped her arms around herself. The wedding dress suddenly felt too tight, too heavy. How did you know about the wedding? I know everything about you, Amara. I've been watching over you for 5 years. I know about Kofi's illness. I know about your mother's debts. I know that Park Min-jae approached you 6 months ago with an offer that seemed too good to be true. His jaw tightened. And I know that his family is forcing this marriage because your brother witnessed Park Sung-ho murder a business rival 3 months ago. The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd suspected, had put pieces together in the sleepless nights leading up to the wedding, but hearing it said out loud made it real. Kofi told me he saw something, she whispered. He was walking home from school and took a shortcut through the industrial district. He came home shaking, said he'd seen men hurting someone. I thought it was just a fight. I didn't know it was murder. Park Sung-ho is Min-jae's uncle. He's a prosecutor, one of the most powerful men in Seoul. He's also completely corrupt. Ji-hun turned to face her fully. The Parks discovered that Kofi witnessed the murder. They couldn't kill him outright without raising suspicion, so they orchestrated this. Get you to marry into the family, control you both, ensure your silence. Your brother's illness was convenient leverage. Amar felt sick. They said they would pay for his treatment. They said they had connections to the best doctors. They do. They also have connections to make sure those doctors withdraw treatment the moment you step out of line. Ji-hun's voice was hard now, angry. The marriage wasn't about love or family. It was about ownership. They were going to imprison you both in silk and money and call it generosity. The car turned into an underground parking garage. They descended several levels, the light dimming with each spiral down. Amara should have been terrified. She was alone with a man she didn't know, surrounded by his armed men, driving into the depths of a building she couldn't identify. But somehow, the fear she'd been carrying for months was starting to lift. Not because she trusted Ji-hun, but because for the first time since this nightmare began, someone was telling her the truth. The car stopped. Ji-hun got out first, then offered his hand to help her. She ignored it, gathering the ridiculous wedding dress and stepping out on her own. They were in some kind of private garage, immaculately clean, filled with expensive cars. An elevator waited with doors already open. They rode up in silence. When the doors opened, Amara stepped into a penthouse that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked all of Seoul, the city sprawling beneath them like a glittering map. The space was modern, minimalist, all clean lines and expensive simplicity. A woman in a gray suit appeared, bowed to Ji-hun, and then turned to Amara. Miss, I've prepared a room for you. If you'd like to change, I have clothes in your size. How do you have clothes in my size? Amara asked. Ji-hun answered. I told you. I've been watching over you for 5 years. I know everything about you. It should have sounded creepy. It should have terrified her. But the way he said it, tired and matter-of-fact, it just sounded sad. Like a man fulfilling a promise he never wanted to make. Amara followed the woman to a bedroom that was bigger than the apartment she shared with her mother and brother. The clothes laid out on the bed were her style exactly, soft fabrics and earth tones, nothing flashy. There was even a pair of her favorite brand of sneakers in the exact right size. She changed quickly, peeling off the wedding dress and leaving it in a white puddle on the floor. She never wanted to see it again. The jeans and sweater felt like coming back to herself, like shedding a costume. When she returned to the main room, Ji-hun had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He stood by the windows looking out at the city, and for the first time she noticed how exhausted he looked. Like a man who hadn't slept in days. My brother, Amara said. Is he safe? I have 6 men at the hospital right now, Ji-hun said without turning around. The Parks won't touch him. I've made that very clear. By doing what exactly? What did you mean when you said it would be an act of war? Now he turned to face her. I mean that I run the second largest organization in Seoul. The Parks run the fourth. If they harm your brother, every business they own, every politician they've bought, every secret they're hiding will be exposed and destroyed. They know this. They won't risk it. Amara sank onto the couch. You're a gangster. Yes. My father was friends with a gangster. Your father saw people, not labels. It's why I loved him. Jihan moved to a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and brought one to her. You don't have to drink it, but you might want to. She took it, drank half in one burning swallow. So what happens now? You've rescued me from one criminal family. Do I just live here as your prisoner instead? You're not my prisoner. You can leave anytime you want. And go where? Back to my mother's apartment where the Parks can find me? Back to the hospital where Kofi is helpless. She laughed bitterly. You might not call it prison, but it looks the same from where I'm sitting. Jihan sat across from her, elbows on his knees, holding his glass loosely in both hands. I have a proposal. You won't like it. I already don't like any of this. Marry me instead. Amara nearly dropped her glass. What? Marry me. For real. Legally binding, publicly announced, completely legitimate. He held up a hand before she could speak. Let me explain. In my world there are rules. Old rules that even people like the Parks have to follow. One of those rules is that you don't touch another boss's wife. Not without starting a war that will destroy you both. If you marry me, you become untouchable. The Parks can't threaten you, can't use Kofi against you, can't touch your family without consequences they're not willing to face. You're insane. I'm practical. This is the only way to guarantee your safety and your brother's. Minjae's family won't stop. They'll wait a week, a month, 6 months, and then they'll come for you again. They'll use your mother, your friends, anyone they can leverage. Unless you're protected by someone they're too afraid to cross. Amara stood up, pacing to the windows. Soul stretched out below her, millions of people living normal lives, going to normal jobs, having normal problems. She'd been one of them 6 months ago. Now she was standing in a penthouse discussing marriage with a gangster who claimed to have been watching her for 5 years. This is insane, she repeated. You're asking me to marry a complete stranger. I'm asking you to let me keep the promise I made to your father. He asked me to protect you. This is how I do it. She turned to face him. And what do you get out of this? Don't tell me it's just about keeping a promise. Nobody does something this extreme for guilt alone. Jihan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Your father was the last good man I knew. The last person who believed I could be something other than what I became. When he died, that belief died with him. If I can protect you, if I can keep you safe and free, then maybe some part of him lives on. Maybe some part of me is still worth saving. The honesty in his voice made her throat tight. She looked at this man, this stranger who wore violence like a second skin but spoke about her father with something close to reverence. What would this marriage look like? She asked carefully. Would you expect me to actually be your wife? No. This would be a business arrangement. Protection in exchange for your cooperation. You would live here, or in a separate apartment if you prefer. You would have your own space, your own life. I would not touch you. I would not demand anything from you except that you maintain the appearance of being my wife in public when necessary. For how long? Until the threat is gone. A year minimum. Long enough to convince the Parks that pursuing you is futile. Amara laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. A year of my life. Married to a gangster I don't know. Playing house while my actual life just disappears. Your actual life disappeared the moment Kofi witnessed that murder, Jihan said, and his voice was gentle but firm. The Parks made sure of that. I'm offering you a way to get it back. She wanted to scream at him, to throw the whiskey glass at his head and run from this place. But where would she run to? The Parks would be waiting. Minjae's family had resources and connections that her fury and fear couldn't match. What about Kofi? She asked. What happens to him? I'll have him transferred to a private facility. The best care money can buy. Your mother can stay with him. They'll both be protected. And you just happen to have the ability to do all this. To move people around, to protect them, To threaten one of Seoul's most powerful families. Yes. She walked back to the couch, sat down and finished her whiskey. The burn in her throat felt real grounding. If I agree to this, I want conditions. Name them. First, I want to see Kofi. Tonight. I need to know he's really safe. Done. We'll go as soon as you're ready. Second, I want to continue working at the gallery. I'm not going to just sit in this penthouse like some decorative object. The gallery is owned by Park Sung-ho's brother-in-law. You can't go back there. But I can arrange for you to work at a different gallery. One outside their sphere of influence. Amara's hands clenched. Everything. The Parks had infiltrated every corner of her life, and she'd been too desperate to see it. Fine. A different gallery then. Third condition. I want the truth. About my father, about how he died, about everything. No more secrets. Ji-hun's jaw tightened. Some truths will hurt. I don't care. I've been lied to enough. Agreed. And fourth. She met his eyes directly. This marriage ends the moment the threat is over. You don't get to decide when I'm safe enough to leave. We set a clear timeline, and when it's done I walk away. No strings. No obligations. Agreed. She should ask for more time. Should demand to think about it, to talk to her mother, to find another way. But there was no other way, and they both knew it. Ji-hun was offering her the only path out of the trap the Parks had built. 1 year, she said. Starting from the day we legally marry. After that I'm free. 1 year, Ji-hun confirmed. He stood, walked to a desk and pulled out a folder. I had my lawyer draw up a contract. It specifies all the terms we've discussed. You're welcome to have your own lawyer review it. I don't have a lawyer. Then I'll provide you with one. Someone independent who will represent your interests, not mine. Amara took the folder, flipped through pages of dense legal text. It all looked legitimate, but she had no idea what half of it meant. She was an art history graduate, not a law student. How did you have time to prepare all this? She asked. You just crashed my wedding an hour ago. I've been preparing for this possibility for 3 weeks, Ji-hun said. Ever since I learned what the Parks were planning. I had hoped you would refuse the marriage on your own, but when I saw you standing at that altar, I knew you wouldn't. Or couldn't. So I prepared a contingency. You've been planning to marry me for 3 weeks. I've been planning to save you for 3 weeks. Marriage is just the mechanism. She should be angry. She should be terrified. But all she felt was exhausted. Exhausted from months of fear. From carrying the weight of Kofi's life on her shoulders. From pretending to be grateful to Min-jae while knowing what his family really wanted. Let's go see my brother, she said, standing up. And then I'll sign your contract. The hospital was a private facility in Gangnam, all glass and steel and hushed efficiency. Ji-hun's men were subtle but present, positioned at every entrance, their eyes constantly scanning. The nurse at the desk recognized Ji-hun immediately, her professional smile going tight with nerves. Mr. Kong. Miss Foster's family is in room 412. They took an elevator to the 4th floor. As they walked down the quiet corridor, Amara's heart pounded. She hadn't seen Kofi since yesterday morning, before the wedding preparations had begun. What if the Parks had already done something? What if Ji-hun's protection had come too late? The door to room 412 was ajar. She pushed through and there was Kofi sitting up in bed, eating pudding and watching cartoons on the TV mounted to the wall. He looked small in the hospital bed, his brown skin ashy in the fluorescent light, but he was alive and alert and smiling at the screen. Her mother sat in the chair beside him, holding his hand. She looked up when Amara entered, and her face crumpled. Amara, she breathed, standing, rushing forward. What happened? The wedding, you just ran. And then Min-jae's mother called and said terrible things, and I didn't know what to do. And then these men showed up and said we were being moved and I was so scared. Amara caught her mother in a tight hug. It's okay, Mom. I'm okay. We're all okay. Kofi looked past her to where Ji-hun stood in the doorway, his small face curious. Who's that? That's Ji-hun, Amara said, pulling back from her mother. He's a friend. He's helping us. Jihan stepped into the room, and Amara watched her mother's eyes widen as she took in the expensive suit, the cold authority he carried like a second skin. But he knelt down beside Kofi's bed, bringing himself to the boy's level, and when he spoke his voice was gentle. "Hello, Kofi. My name is Kang Jihan. I knew your father." Kofi's eyes went huge. "You knew my dad?" "I did. He was one of the bravest men I ever met. He died when I was little. I don't remember him very much. He loved you very much. And he would be very proud of how brave you've been." Kofi beamed, and Amara felt something crack in her chest. She watched Jihan talk to her brother about their father, watched him handle the child with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man who had walked into her wedding with 20 armed men. Her mother pulled her aside, voice low. "Amara, what's going on? Who is this man?" "It's complicated, Mom. But he's helping us. The Parks were using Kofi to control me. Jihan is making sure they can't do that anymore." "How? Why would he help us?" "Because Dad saved his life. And he made a promise." Her mother's face went pale. "Your father saved someone's life? 5 years ago. The night he died." Tears spilled down her mother's cheeks. "I always knew there was more to what happened. The police said it was random, but your father would never have been in that part of the city for no reason. I thought maybe he was having an affair. And I hated myself for thinking it, but I couldn't understand. He wasn't having an affair. He was protecting a friend." They stayed at the hospital for an hour. Jihan arranged for a private room for Amara's mother, made sure the medical staff understood that Kofi's care was to be the absolute highest priority, and spoke quietly with the head doctor about transferring specialists. Amara watched him move through the space with quiet efficiency, making things happen with a word or a look, and she began to understand the scope of the power he wielded. This was a man who could remake reality with a phone call. When they finally left, Kofi was asleep. Her mother had been given a private suite on the same floor, and there were 6 of Jihan's men positioned throughout the hospital wing. In the car, Amara leaned her head back against the leather seat. "Thank you. For what you did with Kofi. You didn't have to be kind to him. Your brother is innocent in all this. He doesn't deserve to suffer because adults made terrible choices." "Neither did I." Jihan glanced at her. "No, you didn't. Which is why I'm going to make sure the Parks pay for what they tried to do to you." There was something in his voice that made her skin prickle. "What are you planning?" "Nothing you need to worry about. The Parks will learn that there are consequences for threatening what's mine. I'm not yours. Once we're married you will be. At least in the eyes of the world that matters." He turned to look out the window. "I'm not your enemy, Amara. I know it feels that way. I know I'm forcing you into an impossible situation. But I swear to you I will keep you safe. That's all I want." "Is it?" she asked quietly. "Or do you want absolution? You want to save me so you can tell yourself you're not as bad as you think you are." He was silent for a long moment. "Maybe. Does it matter?" "I don't know yet." They returned to the penthouse. Jihan showed her to the guest room where she'd changed earlier, told her it was hers for as long as she needed it. The woman in the gray suit, whose name was apparently Mrs. Choi, had stocked the closet with more clothes, all in Amara's size, all in her style. "I'll have the lawyer here tomorrow morning," Jihan said from the doorway. "You can review the contract properly then. But for tonight try to rest. You've been through enough." "How am I supposed to rest? I just ran away from my wedding and agreed to marry a gangster. My life is completely insane." "Yes," he agreed. "But you're alive. And your brother is safe. Everything else we'll figure out." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Amara stood in the middle of the pristine room, surrounded by clothes bought by a stranger, and finally let herself cry. She cried for her father, who had died protecting someone she'd never met. She cried for Kofi, sick and small and caught in adult games. She cried for her mother, terrified and alone. And she cried for herself, for the life she'd planned that had evaporated the moment her brother took a shortcut through the wrong neighborhood. When the tears finally stopped, she washed her face in the marble bathroom, changed into the silk pajamas that had been left on the bed, and climbed under covers that probably cost more than a month of her old salary. She thought she'd never sleep, but exhaustion pulled her under within minutes. She dreamed of her father, young and smiling, telling her about a friend he'd made. A good man who had gotten lost. In the dream, her father said, "Sometimes the lost ones just need someone to show them the way home." When she woke, sunlight was streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Mrs. Choi knocked softly on the door. "Miss Amara? Breakfast is ready when you are. And the lawyer is here." The lawyer was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and professional, who introduced herself as Lee Sun-hee and made it very clear from the start that she worked for Amara, not Ji-hun. "Mr. Kong has paid my retainer, but my duty is to you," she said, spreading the contract across the dining table. "I've reviewed this document. It's actually quite favorable. Much more favorable than I would have expected." For the next 2 hours, Sun-hee walked Amara through every clause. The contract specified that she would receive a monthly allowance, that all her living expenses would be covered, that she would have complete autonomy over her own life within the bounds of maintaining the marriage's public appearance. Most importantly, it specified exactly 1 year from the date of legal marriage, after which she could dissolve the union with no strings attached and no financial obligations. "There's a termination clause here that's particularly unusual," Sun-hee said, pointing to a section near the end. "If at any time you feel unsafe or wish to end the arrangement, you can invoke this clause. Mr. Kong has agreed to immediately dissolve the marriage and provide you with a substantial settlement, no questions asked." "How substantial?" $5 million. Amara's head spun. "That's insane. It's insurance. He wants you to know you always have a way out." Sun-hee looked at her over the rim of her glasses. "I've worked in family law for 30 years. I've never seen a contract like this. Most marriage agreements are about protecting assets or controlling behavior. This one seems designed to protect you." "He feels guilty. About my father." "Perhaps. But guilt alone doesn't usually translate into this level of legal protection. This is a man who genuinely wants to make sure you're taken care of." Amara signed the contract. Her hand shook slightly as she wrote her name, but she did it. Sun-hee witnessed the signature, and just like that, the first step was done. Ji-hun appeared as Sun-hee was packing up her briefcase. "Everything acceptable?" "More than acceptable," Amara said. "Suspiciously generous, actually. I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to free you. By binding me to you for a year. Sometimes the path to freedom takes a detour." After Sun-hee left, Ji-hun sat across from Amara at the dining table. "We need to get married quickly. Legally and publicly. I've arranged for us to register the marriage at the district office tomorrow afternoon. After that, we'll need to make a public appearance so the Parks know this is real." "What kind of public appearance?" "There's a charity gala tomorrow night. Seoul's elite will be there, including Park Sung-ho. We'll announce our marriage there. You want me to face them? The day after we get married. I want them to see that you're protected now. That touching you means declaring war on me." His eyes were hard. "I want Park Sung-ho to look at you and know that he failed. That he'll never control you or your family again. And if he tries something at the gala? He won't. He's corrupt and violent, but he's not stupid. He knows what I'm capable of." "What are you capable of?" Ji-hun stood, walked to the windows. "Your father asked me once why I stayed in this world when I had enough money to leave. I told him it was because I was good at it. At controlling territory, at making people too afraid to cross me, at building an empire on fear and respect." He turned back to her. "I'm capable of destroying the Parks completely. Of erasing every business they own. Of exposing every crime they've committed. Of making sure they lose everything. I haven't done it yet because wholesale destruction creates chaos, and chaos is bad for everyone. But if they threaten you again, I won't hesitate. You're saying you'd start a war for me. I'm saying I'd end one." The next day passed in a blur. Mrs. Choi took Amara shopping for appropriate clothes. A strange experience where money seemed completely irrelevant. They bought dresses for the gala, casual clothes for daily life, shoes and accessories and things Amara had never owned. Everything was delivered to the penthouse within hours. That afternoon they went to the district office. It was anticlimactic, really. A bureaucrat who barely looked at them, some forms to sign, a stamp, and just like that, Amara became Mrs. Kang Ji-hun. No ceremony, no flowers, no celebration. Just the legal fact. In the car afterward, Ji-hun pulled out a small box. "I need you to wear this tonight." Inside was a ring. Not the massive diamond engagement ring Min-jae had given her, which she'd left at the altar. This was different. A platinum band set with a single dark emerald, simple and beautiful. "It was my mother's," Ji-hun said quietly. "She died when I was young. My father gave it to me before he passed. It's the only thing I have from either of them." Amara stared at the ring. "You're giving me your mother's ring for a fake marriage?" "It's not fake. It's real, just not romantic. And I want the Parks to see that ring and know this is serious. That you're not some temporary arrangement." She let him slide it onto her finger. Fit perfectly, of course, because he knew everything about her, including apparently her ring size. The gala was held at a luxury hotel in Gangnam, the kind of place where parking valets drove cars that cost more than houses. Amara wore a black silk dress that Mrs. Choi had insisted made her look like royalty, her hair styled in elegant locks that cascaded down her back. Ji-hun wore a tuxedo that probably cost as much as the dress, and together they looked like they belonged in this world of wealth and power. They didn't. The ballroom was magnificent, all crystal and gold, filled with Seoul's elite sipping champagne and making deals over canapes. Amara felt every eye turn to them as they entered, felt the whispers ripple through the crowd. "That's Kang Ji-hun. And who's the woman with him? Isn't that the girl who was supposed to marry Park Min-jae? Did you hear what happened at the wedding?" Ji-hun's hand rested lightly on her lower back, steady and warm. He leaned down to whisper in her ear. "Breathe. You look perfect. And you're stronger than anyone in this room." "I'm terrified." "So are they. Trust me." He guided her through the crowd, introducing her to people whose names she immediately forgot. Business owners, politicians, society wives. Everyone was polite, everyone smiled, but she could see the calculation in their eyes. Trying to figure out who she was, what she meant to Ji-hun, whether she was worth cultivating or dismissing. And then she saw them. Park Sung-ho and his family, clustered near the bar. Min-jae was there too, his face dark with fury. When he saw Amara he started forward, but his uncle grabbed his arm, holding him back. Ji-hun felt her tense. "Easy. They won't do anything here. Min-jae looks like he wants to kill me." "He probably does. But he won't get the chance." Park Sung-ho approached them, his face a mask of polite civility that didn't reach his eyes. He was in his 50s, distinguished looking, with gray at his temples and expensive cologne that couldn't hide the rot underneath. "Mr. Kang," he said smoothly. "What a surprise to see you here. And Miss Foster, or should I say Mrs. Kang now? I heard about your sudden change of plans." "The plans changed because your family was using my brother to force me into marriage," Amara said before Ji-hun could speak. Her voice was steady, clear. "That's called human trafficking, Mr. Park." Sung-ho's smile tightened. "I have no idea what you're talking about. My nephew was simply helping a young woman in need by threatening to kill her brother if she didn't marry him. Very helpful. You have quite an imagination, Mrs. Kang. Perhaps Mr. Kang should know the kind of woman he's married. One who makes wild accusations about respected families." Ji-hun spoke then, his voice quiet and absolutely lethal. "Amara's brother witnessed you murder Kim Tae-jin on August 15th. He filmed it on his phone. The video is currently in a secure location, but if anything happens to my wife or her family, it will be delivered to every news outlet in Seoul, along with evidence of the 17 other murders you've committed in the last decade." He smiled, and it was like watching a shark bare its teeth. "I suggest you take your respectable family and stay very far away from mine." The color drained from Park Sung-ho's face. Around them, conversations had gone quiet. People were listening, pretending not to, but definitely listening. "You're bluffing," Sung-ho said, but his voice wavered. "Try me. Jihan said softly. Please. I would love an excuse. Sung-ho turned on his heel and walked away. Min-jae stayed behind for a moment, staring at Amara with such hatred that she actually stepped closer to Jihan. You'll regret this, Min-jae said quietly. Both of you. The only thing I regret, Amara said, is ever believing you were anything other than what you are. A coward who hides behind his family's money. Min-jae's hand twitched, like he wanted to hit her. Jihan moved just a slight shift, but suddenly he was between them, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Touch her, Jihan said, and I'll break every bone in your hand. Then I'll move on to the rest of you. Min-jae backed away, nearly stumbling in his haste. After they left, Jihan turned to Amara. Are you all right? I think I need air. They walked out onto the balcony overlooking the city. Amara gripped the railing, breathing in the cool night air, trying to stop her hands from shaking. You did well in there, Jihan said. I told a powerful prosecutor that I had evidence of his murders. At a public event. I'm either brave or completely insane. You're both. It's one of your better qualities. She laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. How is this my life now? A week ago, I was worried about gallery exhibitions and paying rent. Now I'm married to a gangster and threatening prosecutors. If you want to go back inside, we can. Or we can leave. Whatever you need. I want to know the truth about my father. You promised me the truth. Jihan was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But not here. Let's go home. Back at the penthouse, Jihan poured them both whiskey and sat across from her in the living room. The city glittered outside the windows, oblivious to the conversation about to happen. Your father and I met 15 years ago, Jihan began. I was 19, stupid, and had just inherited my father's organization. Your father was teaching at the university. I took one of his night classes because I'd never finished school and thought maybe I should get an education. You took a literature class? Modern African literature. It changed my life. Jihan smiled, soft and sad. Your father had this way of talking about stories like they mattered more than money or power. Like they were the things that made us human. I was hooked. I kept taking his classes and eventually we became friends. He knew what I did, but he never judged me. He just asked me to think about what kind of man I wanted to be. And what kind of man did you want to be? Someone better than my father. Someone who used power to protect instead of destroy. Your father helped me see that it was possible. Jihan took a drink. 5 years ago, I was in trouble. A rival organization was making a move on my territory. There was going to be a war, and a lot of people were going to die. Your father talked me through it. Helped me find a different way. I negotiated a truce instead of starting a bloodbath. It should have worked. His voice went hard. But there were 3 men from the rival organization who didn't want peace. They wanted me dead so they could take over both territories. They tracked me down one night when I was meeting with your father. We were in an alley near the university just talking, and they came out of nowhere with guns. And my father stepped in front of you. He didn't hesitate, didn't think, just moved between me and the bullets. He was hit 3 times before my security could get there and stop them. I held him while he died. His last words were, "Promise me you'll watch over Amara. She's going to need someone who understands the darkness." Jihan's voice cracked. I promised. And then I made sure those 3 men and everyone who sent them suffered in ways they couldn't have imagined. Amara felt tears on her cheeks. He died because of you. Yes. And you've spent 5 years trying to make up for it. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. It will never be enough. She stood, walked to the window, put her hand against the cold glass. I hated you for about 5 minutes when you first told me. I wanted to blame you for taking him from us. But that's not fair, is it? He made his choice. He chose to save you because he believed you were worth saving. I'm not sure I am. Neither am I. But he thought so. And he was the smartest man I ever knew. Jihan came to stand beside her, not touching, just near. I can't give you back your father. I can't undo the last 5 years. But I can make sure the rest of your life is free. Free from the parks, from threats, from fear. That's all I have to offer. It's more than anyone else has offered. She turned to look at him. Really look at him. Saw the guilt carved into the lines around his eyes, the exhaustion from carrying impossible weight, the fierce determination to keep a promise to a dead man. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I understand why you're doing this. That's more than I deserve. Probably. They stood there in silence, two people bound by grief and promises and a marriage that was real in every way except the one that mattered. The weeks that followed developed a strange rhythm. Amara spent her days at a new gallery Jihan had arranged, curating exhibitions and losing herself in art that didn't demand anything from her. Mrs. Choi became something like a friend, teaching her to navigate the social requirements of being married to one of Seoul's most powerful men. She visited Kofi every other day, watching her brother grow stronger as the best doctor's money could buy work to stabilize his condition. And at night, she came home to the penthouse, to quiet dinners with Jihan where they talked about art and books and anything except the violence that funded their lives. He was careful with her. Never pushed for more than she wanted to give. Never demanded affection or intimacy. He kept his promise, sleeping in his own room, giving her space, treating her with a respect that made it hard to maintain her anger. But she caught him sometimes, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Something soft and wounded, like he was looking at something precious that he knew he'd never really have. 2 months into their marriage, everything changed. Amara was at the gallery when Mrs. Choi called. You need to come home. Now. There's been an incident. Her heart stopped. Kofi. No. Mr. Kong. She arrived at the penthouse to find it swarming with Jihan's men. She pushed through to the living room and found him sitting on the couch, shirt torn and bloody, a doctor stitching a knife wound along his ribs. What happened? She demanded. It's nothing, Jihan said through gritted teeth. You're bleeding. That's not nothing. One of his men, a quiet guy named Taemin, spoke up. The parks sent assassins. 5 of them. They came at Mr. Kong when he was leaving a business meeting. Did they? Amara couldn't finish the question. They're dead, Taemin said flatly. All of them. But one got close enough to do damage. Amara waited until the doctor finished, until everyone else left, and then she rounded on Jihan. You said they wouldn't try anything. You said the threat was enough. Apparently I was wrong. This is because of me. They're trying to kill you because you married me. They're trying to kill me because I humiliated them. Because I took away something they thought they owned. He stood, wincing slightly. This isn't your fault, Amara. Yes, it is. You said marrying you would protect me. You didn't say it would put you in danger. I'm always in danger. That's the life I chose. You chose it because my father died for you. You're trying to save me to make up for not saving him, and now you're going to get killed doing it. Don't you see how insane that is? I see it perfectly clearly. I also don't care. She wanted to scream at him, to shake him until he saw sense. Instead, she found herself crossing the room, putting her hands on his face, making him look at her. I care, she said quietly. You don't get to die for me, Jihan. That's not how this works. Something shifted in his eyes. Amara. No. Listen to me. I spent 2 months hating you for taking my father from me. But he's gone and you're here and I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of pretending this marriage is just a contract. You've been good to me, kind to my family. You've given me freedom and safety and asked for nothing in return. So no, you don't get to die and leave me feeling guilty for the rest of my life. I don't know how to keep you safe without putting myself in danger. Then let me help. Stop treating me like something fragile you have to protect and let me be part of this. I'm your wife. For real now if you want. Not just on paper. Jihan's hands came up to cover hers. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. My father believed you were worth saving. I'm starting to think he was right. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, and she kissed him back. Not because she had to, not because it was required, but because somewhere in the last 2 months this strange, violent, guilt-ridden man had become important to her. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm still going to protect you. I know. But you're going to let me protect you too. Deal. The war with the Parks came to a head 3 weeks later. Jihan's intelligence network discovered that Park Sung-ho was planning something big. A move designed to eliminate Jihan and take control of his territory. But they didn't know the specifics, didn't know when or how. Amara was in the gallery when Taemin arrived, his face grim. We need to get you somewhere safe. The Parks are making their move today. Where's Jihan? Handling it. But he wants you protected. No. Amara grabbed her phone. I'm not hiding while he fights my battles. She called Jihan. He answered on the first ring. You're supposed to be in the safe house. And you're supposed to treat me like a partner, not a porcelain doll. Where are you? A pause. Then, the warehouse district. But Amara, this is dangerous. Everything about our lives is dangerous. I'm coming. She hung up before he could argue, turned to Taemin. Take me to him. Now. The warehouse was chaos. Jihan's men were engaged in a firefight with what looked like 24 of Park Sung-ho's people. Amara arrived to find Jihan coordinating from behind cover, his voice calm despite bullets pinging off metal around him. When he saw her, fury and fear warred on his face. What are you doing here? Being your wife. She ducked down beside him. What do you need? I need you somewhere safe. Too late for that. So tell me how I can help. He stared at her for a long moment, then made a decision. Can you shoot? My father taught me. Target practice. He handed her a gun. Stay behind cover. Only shoot if someone gets close. And Amara? Don't die. Please. Same to you. The next hour was the most terrifying of her life. She didn't have to shoot anyone. Jihan's men were too efficient for that. But she stayed beside him, watched him work, saw the cold competence he brought to violence. And she understood finally what her father had seen. Not a monster, but a man doing terrible things in a terrible world, trying to find some scrap of honor in the chaos. When it was over, Park Sung-ho lay dead, killed by one of his own men who'd been paid to betray him. The rest of his organization scattered, leaderless and broken. Min-jae had fled the country. The threat was over. Jihan turned to Amara, covered in blood that wasn't his, and said, You should have stayed away. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Back at the penthouse after they'd both showered and changed, Jihan found her on the balcony, watching the sunrise paint Seoul in gold. It's over, he said. The Parks are finished. You're safe now. I know. Which means the contract is fulfilled. You can leave if you want. The full year isn't even up, but the threat is gone. You're free. Amara turned to face him. What if I don't want to be free of you? Amara. You asked me to marry you to keep a promise to my father. But somewhere along the way this became real. At least for me. She took his hands. I'm not saying I'm in love with you. I'm not sure I know what that feels like yet. But I know I don't want to leave. I know that when I thought you might die today, it felt like losing my father all over again. And I know that my father spent his last breath asking you to protect me because he trusted you. I think I want to trust you too. Jihan pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. For how long? She smiled against his chest. Let's start with forever and see how it goes. 1 year later, Amara stood in the same penthouse, but everything was different. Kofi was healthy, living with their mother in a beautiful apartment Jihan had bought for them. The gallery where she worked was thriving. And the man she'd married out of necessity had become the man she chose every single day. Jihan walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? About how a year ago I was standing at a different altar, about to marry the wrong man, and a stranger crashed my wedding and changed my life. Regrets? Not a single one. She turned in his arms. Well, maybe one. What's that? I wish my father could see this. See us. I think he'd be happy. I think he is, Jihan said softly. Wherever he is, I think he knows I kept my promise. I protected you. And somehow impossibly you protected me too. She kissed him long and slow, tasting love and redemption and the future they built from broken promises and second chances. I will marry her instead, she murmured against his lips, echoing the words that had started everything. Best decision you ever made. Second best, he corrected. The best was letting you keep me. And in the city below, soul glittered like a promise, like hope, like home.